My name is Caitlin Jones, and I am going to talk with you today about the case file forms and the ERP file. In the first section, you'll see the eligibility documents. Those are both forms that a client will need to present, as well as forms that you'll need to review with the client. The referral form is something that may be provided if the client was referred through an outside organization. Otherwise, that may not be present. Eligibility documents which are required include the I-94, which is pictured on this slide, as well as the Social Security card, EAD or Legal Permanent Resident card, and the state ID. The next document that's in the case file will only be applicable for recipients of TANF or RCA benefits. This is the Agreement for Mutual Responsibility, or AMR. This is something that will be provided to the case manager by the County Assistance Office when a TANF or RCA client is referred. This only needs to be present in the file and does not require any further review. The next form in the file is the Declaration of Status, which we'll now review. The Declaration of Status is a form which confirms eligibility for the program. The first section of the form that the client will need to sign lists all of the individuals who are eligible to participate in our program. Generally, when reviewing this form with a client, I would recommend pointing out the specific status which makes a client eligible, but not reviewing each of the statuses, as not all will be applicable to the client. Then you'll need to review that a client is required to provide the following documents in order to participate in the program. Those include, again, the documents which are listed, the I-94, the state ID, the EAD or green card, and the Social Security card. Next, you'll review the release statement with clients, which provides information on confidentiality policies at NSC and how information is used and shared in the agency and with funders. Lastly, the client will need to confirm and sign that they have an eligible immigration status and include either the date of arrival or the date their status was granted if they have any status besides refugee status. Please make sure that an interpreter signs if they assist with reviewing this form. In addition to the Declaration of Status form, other general NSC forms are required in the eligibility document section. Those include the Agreement for Services, the Confidentiality form, the Rights, Responsibilities, and Grievance Notice, the Audio, Video, and Photo Authorization, and a general release form which can be used specifically for any outside organizations that a client is working with in order for them to pursue their case goals. In section 2, you'll see the primary case management forms that you will use as a case manager. The first one is the intake form. At the top of the intake form, you'll see a lot of general information that you'll primarily need to ask the client about in order to include. The enrollment date will be the date of your intake with the client, and you don't need to fill out the project end date until the case closure. Information such as the alien number, the Social Security number, emergency contact, phone number, and relationship can all be obtained from the client. The CAO caseworker information is most helpful if you are working with a TANF or RCA recipient. Otherwise, it may not be relevant to services. Most referrals come to our program through an outside organization or even an internal referral. So in most cases, you'll select yes. You can check with the program coordinator, me, to find out who referred the client if you're not sure. For TANF and RCA recipients, clients should clearly know if they're receiving a cash assistance benefit. For adults with children, they would be receiving cash benefits. The please note that the children would have to be living within the household. Individuals will not receive TANF benefits if their children are living with another family member, with a partner that they're separated from, or if their children are overseas. For singles or couples or individuals who aren't living with their children, they would be receiving RCA cash benefit. RMA and Medicaid are the two health insurance options that are available through the state. The difference is RMA, or Refugee Medical Assistance, is only for those who have been in the United States for less than 8 months, and Medicaid would be the benefit that folks would be receiving if they've been in the United States for more than 8 months. Most clients should be able to answer if they're receiving health insurance or not, if they're receiving cash or not, or if they're receiving SNAP or food stamp benefits or not. It can be helpful to get the case record number for clients if it's at all possible, but some folks may not know where to find that or what that information is. Next, be sure to include information about how much the client is paying for rent. That's helpful later on when you work with a client on a budget. The date of eligibility is the date that the client's eligible immigration status was granted. So if they are a refugee, again, that would be their date of arrival in the United States. But for any other status, so for asylees, for folks with a T visa, for Cuban and Haitian entrants, that would be the date that their eligible status was granted. For the immigration status, if somebody is an LPR but previously held one of the other eligible statuses, please make sure to include the immigration status that made them eligible for program participation. Country of origin, the client should be able to answer. But for secondary migrants, that indicates somebody who lived in another state initially and then moved to Pennsylvania. This is an important piece of information to track for general program funding. Secondary migrants may have been granted status or have been initially resettled in some other state. If a client was initially in some other state, please be sure to get information on the date that they moved, as we're required to report on this on a monthly basis. You'll also need to include information about the languages that clients speak, and ask clients information or get an idea from clients about their comfort in English. This just needs to be a loose approximation to have some good information on if you would be able to conduct a simple phone call in English, or if you need interpretation for everything, or if a client is comfortable in English for all case management meetings. Lastly, as part of the intake, you'll complete the household composition information. This is solely for immediate family, so does not need to include any housemates or friends who might be sharing a household with them. So this would include parents, children, if it is a multi-generational household, or if somebody is a guardian of children, it could also include that. Lastly, make sure that the client is able to sign the intake form, which is part of the enrollment procedure. The next form in the case management section that the case managers will fill out is the needs assessment and service plan. The needs assessment and service plan is a tool that case managers use to help determine a client's situation, to get to know them, and help determine what sorts of services a client might need to be connected to in order to be successful in navigating life in the United States and obtaining employment. All of this feeds into the service plan, which is the second part of this document. You'll collect information from clients around shelter and housing, around safety, childcare, and health. If any urgent issues emerge while you're completing this form with clients, make sure that they are addressed. Particularly if a client has an urgent safety need related to a domestic violence situation, it will be important to connect the client with urgent options for safety planning and safety support. Similarly, if a client reports any emergency medical needs that they need response to, please ensure that you help connect them with those services, whether that's connecting with 911 or connecting with NSC's health team or other health resources to make sure that they're getting any urgent health care. Any needs that come up in this area should be documented in a case note as well. Next, you'll make sure to collect some information around transportation. Transportation information helps assess what supports we might need in order to help a client be able to successfully navigate transportation to get to work. Transportation will also be important to be aware of if a client is receiving a cash benefit from welfare, as they may be eligible for transportation assistance. As you talk with clients about social adjustment or community needs, you'll generally be looking to see if clients have connections in their community, as we know that clients need communal support and friends and family in order to live full and good lives. The primary purpose of this question isn't to ask a client if somebody is helping them with financial needs, but primarily to see if they have other people that they connect to and if they want help with connecting with other people in their community. Next, you'll collect some information about education and employment. You don't need to collect intense details here, as the job developers will gather some more information about education and employment. However, we do need to include this as part of the service plan. Next, the legal section is about clients having any questions related to their immigration status in the United States. If a client does have questions or need further support that goes beyond a case management capacity, they can be referred to NSC's legal services. Lastly, you'll need to provide an analysis of the client's strengths and an assessment of whether the client is a good fit for the program. For client strengths, there are many things that you can note, even if a client might not be able to fully articulate. Client strengths can range from family and friend support systems to having a strong work ethic and strong motivation to work, but could also be a client's enthusiasm and excitement about life in the United States. Those could all be good fits, in addition to any skills or educational qualifications that might make them prepared to work and able to find work successfully. Lastly, in the case manager assessment, you're largely making a note about whether the client is a good fit for the program. If the client has an employment-centered goal, then they will be a good fit. And you can note what that employment-centered goal might be. The next section of this form is the Family Self-Sufficiency Plan, which helps outline what services you are going to work with the client to provide. So as you go through the assessment, the needs assessment with the client, you'll make note of any services that might be particularly needed by the client. First, as you work on the self-sufficiency plan, you'll want to work with the client to identify short-term goals and long-term goals. The short-term goals should be related to this program and should be centered around their employment-related goal, whether that's securing a job, finding a job upgrade, or pursuing some sort of educational goal that will support long-term financial self-sufficiency. For the long-term goal, that can include any future that a client has in mind for themselves. That may be that they want to buy a house in the future, and a job would be a way to help them move towards that goal. But it could also be a specific career goal that they want to move towards, whether that's obtaining a university degree or working in their former field of study, though it might take some time to achieve that goal. Next in this form, you'll want to note the services or referrals that a client might need support in. These would be all of the things that you made note of during the needs assessment that a client might need support or a referral for. So you'll go through each of the sections and to note whether a client needs that service, and then write some details about what the service might be. And then once you provide that service or the client successfully was connected with a referral, you'll put the date that the service was provided. So if a client notes concerns related to safety in the home and domestic violence, you would just write yes and write what kinds of needs they might have. You might complete a referral to the Bridge to Wellness program so that a client can get specific support around case management related to domestic violence, as well as access to therapy and other legal supports. But it may also be a referral to the domestic violence hotline or other supports in the city related to safety concerns. Similarly, for health services, if a client reports either an urgent health need or just something that they might need support around, you would include information about what they might need, whether it's an appointment to see a primary care doctor if they haven't connected to primary care in some time, or if they're feeling unwell and don't have access to health insurance and have been hesitant to connect, you would write that the client might need services around health insurance. Once that referral is completed or the service is provided, again, you'll put it in that last column. There is a place at the bottom for other for any services that a client might request that aren't necessarily outlined in any of these other categories. If it does seem something that might be within the scope of a case manager role, you can add that in the other section and document that that's something that you want to work with the client on. Lastly, you'll want to get the client's signature. As this is your plan with the client for how you'll be working together, you'll want to be sure that the client feels that this plan is based on their needs and also outlines the way that you'll be working together. The next forms that are in section 2 is the RE+15. There are more details on that and other trainings available through NSC, so we won't review that today. But we will jump over to review the budgeting form. The budgeting form is a useful tool to use with clients when talking about finances and long-term planning and ensuring that families have enough support to meet all of their basic needs. It can be helpful to do this with clients initially when they enroll in the program, especially if they're newer to the United States, but can also be beneficial to do later on for financial planning or for clients to better understand their finances. No matter the situation, it is important that this budgeting form is filled out in every case file. As you go through the budget, make sure that you know all of the client's regular expenses that they are responsible for. You can also include any other items that aren't necessarily listed on this form. In the monthly income or assistance, you'll want to help clients be able to lay out what assistance they are receiving, as well as any regular income to make sure that their budget is balanced. You should also include things like SNAP benefits, rental assistance, support from family, or any other income that's coming to them on a regular basis. If clients are receiving short-term assistance through a resettlement program or some other program, you'll want to make note of it, but also help clients to see and to know that that assistance is not long-term and that the best solution for financial needs is to go to work quickly in order to be financially self-sufficient. Once you complete the budget, make sure that you have the client sign at the bottom, as well as the interpreter if there's an interpreter who assisted with completing the form. The last form in section 2 is the SSIT assessments. These should be done at the time of enrollment in the program at 6 months and 1 year, as these are the ways that we're checking in with clients and tracking progress. You can find some more information on the SSIT assessments and some other trainings at MSC. Next, in section 3, you'll find the employment documents. The majority of these forms are forms that are completed by the job development team, so the case manager will not need to fill out these forms or do any follow-up. The one form that case managers will need to engage with clients around is ensuring that proof of employment is in the case file. That generally will be a pay stub, but could also include a letter from an employer or an offer letter, or in some cases a W-2. But the best option is to have a pay stub on file once a client starts working. In section 4, you'll see the ESL and job readiness activity documentation. There are a couple of forms that you'll need to pay attention to and ensure are included in the files. For some clients, it will be very important to ensure that these documents are included and that accurate records are kept. But for some other clients, just a referral will suffice. If a client is requesting ESL services and are just generally referred to our program, you can just print out that ESL referral that was made in Apricot, or if there is a paper referral, you could include that. For clients who are participants in TANF and RCA benefits, they will need to be referred to the program and have all documentation showing that they're regularly participating in our program. The first thing will be that the Apricot referral will need to be included in the documentation, but you'll also need to show the attendance plan for participation in the program, as well as keep attendance forms on file, both the signed attendance forms from the client, as well as any other additional documentation proving attendance and the CWDS printout. Let's see, the attendance plan. You'll work with the clients to identify what classes, opportunities, and other programs might help them meet their work activity hour requirement. When clients are referred from the County Assistance Office, the County Assistance Office will determine the number of hours that the client is required to participate. Hours range usually from 15 to 30 hours, depending on the family size and composition. On the work activity plan, you'll want to include the total hours that the County Assistance Office is required, and make sure that the client has a plan for how they'll meet that requirement. You can complete the work activity plan by marking off any classes or activities that will be part of their hours, and note the total number of hours of participation, which should meet the number of total hours required. NSC has a wide range of activities and services that they can use to meet their requirement for participation. In addition to these in-person activities, there's also remote options available during the COVID-19 quarantine, as well as work packet activities that clients can take home to make up for any hours that are missed. As clients participate in ESL in person, they'll also need to complete this attendance sheet. These attendance sheets are filled out by the ESL teachers, and then the attendance is logged in Apricot. These attendance sheets should be placed in the case file for proof that the client is actively participating in the class. In section 5 of the case file, you'll see case notes. These will be printed out in the event that there will be an audit or when the case is closed. Lastly, in section 6, you can see referrals and other services. Most of this will be any correspondence that you have with any other programs or offices related to client services, any referrals that you make as backup documentation that the service was provided. But it also includes information on the special allowance or SPAL, SPAL form, which is for TANF and RCA recipients only. 10 of the RCA recipients are eligible for what's called a special allowance for transportation, but also for some other supports and benefits to support employment. Historically, they have included money to help clients get uniforms, but during the COVID-19 public health emergency, there have been additional information provided allowing clients to purchase computers if needed for participation in their work activity. In order to access that special allowance, clients will need to fill out the special allowance verification form. This specific special allowance is filled out specifically for clients who may need a transportation allowance in order to participate in their work activity. It will include the client's name, their case record number, the date of the request, and then sign it at the bottom. This confirms that the client is participating in the program as required and should be issued that special allowance. These special allowance forms, the first month will need to be issued on a weekly basis. And then again, once the client enters their first full month, we'll need to fill out these forms and submit them to the CAO on a monthly basis. It's best to submit these a couple of days before the first to ensure that clients can access that special allowance for transportation on the first of the month. It's also important to know that when a client is receiving a special allowance, they need to provide receipts showing that they purchased the item that the special allowance was specifically granted for. So that is the list of the case file forms that are in the case file. Thank you.